The grand chamber of the Galactic Concord floated in the endless dark above Thesser Prime, a station of crystal and light where the 12 great species gathered to decide the fate of worlds, and on this day, they would hear the words of a madman Commander Varth Kell walk through the massive doors with guards on either side of him, their weapons ready, their eyes watching his every move, and he did not care, for he had escaped a prison moon to stand in this place. And nothing would stop him from speaking. His scales had once shone like polished emeralds, the mark of a proud Velthari warrior who had served the Concord for 40 cycles, but now they were dull and cracked, damaged by years of confinement and the weight of memories that no medicine could erase, and his 4 eyes, once sharp and clear, now held the wild light of someone who had seen too much. The council members sat in a great circle above him, each representative floating on platforms of shimmering energy, looking down at this broken soldier like he was an insect that had crawled into their sacred space. And High Arbiter Thesana of the Moravax leaned forward, her silver skin catching the light, her expression one of tired patience. "Commander Kell," she said, her voice smooth as water, "you have escaped lawful confinement and interrupted proceedings of the highest importance, and we have allowed you to speak only because of your past service. So speak quickly and speak well." Varth looked up at them, at these powerful beings who controlled fleets and worlds and thought themselves masters of all things, and he felt only pity for their blindness. "You must quarantine the Orion Spur," he said, his voice rough from months of screaming into walls that did not listen. "You must burn every relay station and collapse every transit gate, and you must do it now, today, before it is too late." A ripple of laughter moved through the chamber, soft and cruel, and Minister Keth of the Trade Alliance shook his massive head, his tusks gleaming. "The Orion Spur is empty," Keth said. "Our probes have mapped every world, and we found nothing but primitive creatures still crawling in their own filth. So why should we fear them?" "Your probes were wrong," Varth said, and his voice dropped low, forcing them to lean in to hear. "I have walked on the 3rd world of their yellow star, and I have seen what lives there. And I watched them tear my battalion apart with weapons made of fire and metal and rage." The laughter stopped. High Arbiter Thesana raised one delicate hand, and the chamber fell silent. "Commander," she said carefully, "you were found alone on a dead moon, surrounded by the bodies of your soldiers, and the medical evaluation determined that you experienced a severe psychological break. And everything you claim to remember is simply, 'I remember everything,'" Varth interrupted, his 4 eyes blazing. "I remember the sound of their weapons, crude things that threw metal at incredible speeds, and I remember how they moved, not with grace, but with terrible purpose, never stopping, never tiring, hunting us across the frozen plains for days until we could run no more." He stepped forward, and the guards tensed, but he ignored them. "We had plasma rifles and energy shields and training that took decades to master, and they had sticks that threw fire and bodies that refused to die. And within 3 days, they had learned our tactics, cracked our communications, and turned our own weapons against us." Counselor Yeneth of the Science Directorate made a dismissive sound. "Impossible," she said. "No species can adapt that quickly, and our technology is thousands of cycles beyond anything in the Orion Spur. So your claims make no scientific sense," Varth laughed. "A harsh, unbroken sound, science," he said. "You sit in your towers and study the universe from a distance, and you think you understand the rules, but these creatures, they do not follow rules, they break them. They learn what should take centuries in days, and they do not stop ever. For any reason." He looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of every council member. "They call themselves humans," he said, and the word hung in the air like a curse. "And when I was captured, wounded and dying, they did not kill me, and they did not torture me. And instead they bandaged my wounds and asked me questions, so many questions, about our ships and our worlds and our way of life. That sounds remarkably civilized, High Arbiter the Sana said. Perhaps you misjudge them. You do not understand, Varus said, leaning forward, his voice intense. They were not being kind. They were being efficient. Because everything they learned, they used. And by the end of the first week, they had built their own version of our shield generators, crude but functional. And they were already planning how to reach the stars. The chamber was quiet now, the laughter gone, replaced by something that might have been the first stirring of unease. I escaped, Vorth continued. I stole a damaged shuttle and fled into the void. And when I reached Concord space, I told them everything. And they called me insane, locked me away, told me my mind was broken. He pointed one clawed finger at the council. But my mind is not broken. And I know what I saw, and I know what is coming. Because those creatures, those humans, they looked at the stars with hungry eyes. And they smiled, and they said they would find us. And they said they would come. High Arbiter the Sana sighed and gestured to the guards. Commander Kell, you have spoken, and we have listened. And now you will return to the facility where you can receive the care you clearly need. The guards moved forward, grasping Varth's arms, and he did not resist. For he had known this would happen, had known they would not believe. You are making a mistake, he said quietly as they dragged him toward the door. The greatest mistake in the history of this Concord. And when they come, and they will come, remember that I warned you. Remember that you could have stopped it, and remember that you chose to do nothing. The doors closed behind him, and the council sat in silence for a long moment. Then High Arbiter the Sana smiled and shook her head. A tragic case, she said. Now, shall we return to the matter of trade tariffs? And the council voted to table the matter of the Orion Spur indefinitely. Confident in their power, certain of their safety, blind to the truth that one broken soldier had carried across the stars in the darkness beyond their borders. On a small blue world orbiting a yellow star, the humans were already looking up at the night sky, and they were building ships. 6 months passed in the quiet of space, and the Concorde forgot about the madman and his warnings. And life continued as it always had, slow and orderly and safe. Until the day that everything changed, senior researcher Yenith of the Coordination Bureau sat alone in her laboratory aboard the frontier vessel Illuminated Path, surrounded by screens and sensors and the soft hum of machines, and she was bored. For she had spent 3 cycles mapping dead worlds and empty systems, and she had begun to wonder if her career would end in silence and obscurity. Then the signal arrived. It came from the Orion Spur, from the very region that the council had dismissed. And Yenith sat up straight in her chair as the data scrolled across her screen, her 6 eyes widening with each passing second. The signal was structured, mathematical, unmistakably artificial, a beacon calling out from the darkness. And it came from Sol 3, a small world orbiting a yellow star. The same world that a certain madman had raved about before he was taken away. Yenith felt her hearts beating faster. This was it. She realized this was the discovery that would make her famous. A new species to study, to guide, to bring into the galactic community. And she would be the one who made first contact. She pulled up the preliminary scans and studied them carefully, noting the electromagnetic signals that leaked from the planet, primitive radio waves and television broadcasts that painted a picture of a young civilization, one that had not yet reached the stars. Chemical propulsion, she murmured to herself, watching footage of crude rockets struggling against gravity. No evidence of faster-than-light capability, and their weapons appear to be based on explosive compounds and kinetic force. She calculated their development level and smiled. perhaps 500 cycles from true spacefaring status. She noted in her log, "Minimal threat assessment, and this species appears ripe for guidance and uplift." She did not think about the madman's warnings, for she had never heard them, and even if she had, she would not have believed them. For how could such primitive creatures pose any danger to the might of the Galactic Concord? Yineth initiated first contact protocol with trembling hands, preparing a diplomatic courier drone loaded with the standard greeting package, mathematical proofs that any intelligent species could understand, star maps showing the location of Concord space, and a message of peace translated into 40 languages. Derived from their own broadcasts, she launched the drone and settled back to wait, imagining the celebrations that would greet her return, the honors that would be heaped upon her. The place in history she would claim. The drone never came back. 3 days passed with no response, and Yineth began to worry, sending queries into the void that went unanswered. And she was preparing to launch a second drone when her sensors screamed a warning. Something was approaching. Yineth stared at her screens in confusion, for the object was not coming through subspace, not using the transit gates that connected the galaxy, but was instead traveling through normal space at speeds that should have been impossible, accelerating constantly at forces that would crush any known species into paste. The object was small, barely larger than a shuttle, and its design was crude, ugly, a thing of iron and ceramic and carbon compounds welded together with no elegance or grace. And yet it moved with terrible purpose, eating up the distance between them like a predator closing on its prey. And it was armed. Yineth opened a communication channel with shaking hands. "Unknown vessel," she said, a voice wavering. "This is Senior Researcher Yineth of the Coordination Bureau, and I greet you in peace on behalf of the Galactic Concord." Silence answered her. "Please respond," she continued. "We mean you no harm, and we wish only to establish friendly relations between our peoples." The crude vessel did not slow, did not change course, and Yineth watched it grow larger on her screens with growing dread. Then, finally, a voice came through the speakers, strange and harsh, speaking in broken Concord standard that it must have learned from her own greeting package just days before. "Hello, Yineth," the voice said, and there was something in its tone that made her scales shiver. "We got your message, and we have some questions." The vessel matched speed with the illuminated path, close enough now that Yineth could see through its windows, could see the creature inside. A being with soft skin and small eyes and a mouthful of omnivore teeth that curved upward in what she would later learn was called a smile. "May we come aboard?" the creature asked. And it was not really a question. Yineth looked at the weapons mounted on the crude vessel, looked at the creature's smile, looked at the vast empty space around her where no help could reach her in time. "Of course," she heard herself say. "You are welcome aboard the illuminated path." The creature's smile grew wider. "Thank you," it said. "We have so much to talk about." As the airlock cycled open and the first human set foot on a Concord vessel, Yineth felt a terrible certainty growing in her chest, a feeling that she had just made a mistake she could not undo somewhere. In a cell on a frozen moon, a madman named Vorath Kell woke from a nightmare screaming, knowing without knowing how that his warnings had gone unheeded in the galaxy. Still sleeping, still certain of its safety, had no idea that everything was about to change. The human sat in the holding cell aboard the illuminated path, surrounded by force fields and guards and sensors that tracked its every breath. And it did not seem afraid and stood outside the cell with her datapad in her hands, studying the creature that had invaded her ship and her life. And the more she learned, the more her understanding of the universe crumbled around her. The creature called itself Martinez, a name that meant nothing in any language Yineth knew. And it answered her questions with patience and courtesy, but always, It asked questions of its own, so many questions. About the ship and the Concorde, and the worlds beyond its small blue planet at first. Yenith had dismissed Martinez as a curiosity, a specimen from a primitive world that had somehow stumbled into space too soon. But as the days passed, she began to understand what Vareth Kell had tried to tell the Council. The human was wrong. Everything about it violated the models and predictions that the Science Directorate had developed over thousands of cycles. Every assumption about how intelligent life evolved and behaved. Inth pulled up the biological analysis and read it again with growing unease. The human was a persistence predator. Her scans revealed, descended from ancestors who had hunted prey not through speed or strength, but through endurance, running their targets to exhaustion across endless plains, never stopping, never tiring, following the scent of fear for hours and days until their prey simply collapsed. Its cardiovascular system was a marvel of efficiency, pumping oxygen-rich blood to muscles that could work for hours without rest. And its temperature regulation was beyond anything in the Concorde database, allowing it to function in conditions that would kill most species within minutes. But the body was only the beginning. The human's brain was the true horror, a tangle of neural pathways that processed information at incredible speeds, that learned and adapted and rewired itself in response to new challenges. And Yenith watched with growing dread as Martinez demonstrated this ability in real time on the first day. It could barely speak 5 words of Concorde Standard by the end of the week. It was holding complex conversations with the crew by the second week. It was making jokes, understanding the subtle social dynamics of the ship, identifying tensions between officers that Yenith herself had not noticed. How, she asked it one day, pressing her hands against the force field that separated them. How can you learn so fast? Martinez smiled that unsettling smile. We have to, it said. Our world is harsh, and our history is war. And those who did not adapt died, so we became very good at adapting. Yenith thought about her own species, about the slow and careful progress of Concorde civilization, and she felt a chill run through her scales. What do you want? She asked. Why did you come here? Curiosity, Martinez said simply. We looked up at the stars and wondered what was out there. And when you sent your message, we knew we had to find out. So we built a ship and we came. You built a ship, Yenith repeated. In 3 days, we worked fast, Martinez admitted. We wanted to meet you in her quarters that night. Yenith reviewed the security footage and noticed something that made her blood run cold. Martinez was talking to the guards, not interrogating them, not threatening them, but talking, asking about their families, their hopes, their complaints about the ship and the Concorde and their commanding officers. And the guards were answering, opening up to this alien creature with disturbing ease within days. 3 crew members had begun to question orders, to whisper among themselves about changes that should be made, to look at Yenith with new and measuring eyes. The human had done nothing overtly hostile, had made no threats, had attempted no escape. And yet somehow it had begun to reshape the social fabric of the entire ship, just by talking. Guides thought about Vareth Kell, about the report she had found in the archives, about his battalion being hunted across a frozen moon. She pulled up the combat footage from his helmet recorder and forced herself to watch. The humans in the video were not soldiers, not warriors trained from birth, but simple people with crude weapons. And yet they moved with terrible coordination, learning from every encounter, adapting to every tactic. And within days they had cracked Velthari communications, had learned to predict their movements, had reverse-engineered shield technology from salvaged equipment. They learned in days what took us centuries, Voreth had said. And now Yenith understood what he meant. She looked back at Martinez, sitting peacefully in its cell, and she saw not a prisoner, but a predator, patient and watchful. learning everything it could about its captors, and she realized with growing horror that she had no idea what to do about it somewhere in the depths of the ship. A young ensign was telling Martinez about the patrol routes of Concord defense fleets somewhere on a frozen moon. Loreth Kell was screaming warnings that no one could hear, and somewhere in the void between stars, more human ships were coming. Crude and ugly, and filled with curious creatures who wanted nothing more than to learn. The galaxy was about to discover what happened when a species that never stopped, never tired, and never stopped asking questions turned its attention to the stars, and it was already too late to stop them. The last transmission had arrived 3 days ago. A burst of static and screaming that cut off abruptly, leaving nothing but silence. And the grand chamber of the Galactic Concord erupted into chaos as the recording played for the assembled representatives. But it was not the screaming that silenced them. It was the human. Martinez stood on the bridge of the captured vessel, surrounded by crew members who did not appear to be hostages, who stood beside the creature with expressions that looked almost like loyalty, and it spoke directly into the camera in perfect Moravax, the elegant language of High Arbiter the Sana herself. "We received your message," Martinez said, and its smile was wide and warm and somehow terrifying. "We are coming to say hello, and we have so much to talk about. And we hope we can be friends." The transmission ended. High Arbiter the Sana rose from her platform, her silver skin pale with shock, and for the first time in her long career, she did not know what to say. 17 frontier colonies, Minister Keth rumbled, his massive form trembling with barely contained fury. 17 colonies have reported contact with human vessels in the past cycle alone. And what are they doing? Counselor Yeneth demanded. Are they attacking? Are they invading? Keth shook his head slowly. They are trading, he said. And the words seemed to confuse even him. They are offering goods and services in exchange for information about our technology and culture. And they are asking permission to establish diplomatic relations. Trading, the Sana repeated. As if she had never heard the word before. Some colonies have accepted their offers, Keth continued. And those colonies are already changing, adopting human practices, questioning traditional hierarchies, implementing new systems of governance that they call democracy. This is an invasion, Yeneth hissed. An invasion of ideas rather than weapons. The chamber dissolved into shouting and accusations, and High Arbiter the Sana let it continue for a long moment before raising her hand for silence. Bring me Vareth Kell, she said quietly. The guards left, and the council waited in uncomfortable silence, and when the doors opened again, the old Velthari warrior walked in without restraints, his 4 eyes clear and sharp, his posture straight despite the years of confinement. He looked at the council, at their fearful faces and trembling hands. And he did not say, I told you so. He did not need to, Commander Kell, the Sana said. We require your expertise on the human threat, and we apologize for the manner of your treatment. Vareth stepped forward, his claws clicking on the polished floor. You want to know how to stop them, he said, and his voice was tired but steady. You cannot. Not with weapons, not with fleets, not with anything in your arsenal. That is unacceptable, Keth growled. We have the greatest military force in the galaxy, and they have something better, Vareth replied. They have endurance, and they have adaptability, and they have a way of making others believe in their ideas. He looked around the chamber. I watched a human take a plasma bolt through the chest, he said, and it kept fighting for 30 seconds, long enough to kill my entire squad. And when it finally fell, it was smiling, because it knew others would come after it. The council was silent, but that is not what makes them dangerous. Voreth continued. What makes them dangerous is that they do not want to destroy you, and they do not want to conquer you. And instead they want to trade with you and learn from you and share their ideas with you. How is that dangerous? The Santa-asked Vorath laughed. A harsh and bitter sound, because everywhere they go, every species they touch changes, he said. They ask questions that no one has thought to ask. And they break rules that we did not know were rules. And they make everyone around them want to be better, to do more, to reach higher. He pointed at the council. They are not a threat to the Galactic Concord as an enemy, he said. They are a threat to the Galactic Concord as an idea. Because every species that allies with them stops needing the Concord at all. And your power, your control, your carefully maintained order. It all becomes meaningless when people realize they can make their own choices. The chamber fell silent. What do you suggest we do? The Sana asked quietly. Vorath closed his 4 eyes for a long moment. You have 2 options, he said finally. You can try to destroy them, and you will fail. Because they will learn faster than you can adapt. And they will turn every weapon you use against you. And in the end, they will win through sheer stubborn refusal to give up. And the second option, the Sana asked. Vorath opened his eyes and looked at her. You can join them, he said. You can accept that the old ways are ending. And you can embrace the change that is coming. And maybe, just maybe, you can help shape what comes next instead of being swept away by it. The council erupted into argument once more. Voices raised in fear and anger and denial. But Vorath Kell had said what he came to say. He turned and walked out of the chamber, leaving the leaders of the galaxy to fight among themselves. And as he stepped into the corridor, he saw a view screen showing a human trading vessel docked at a nearby station. The humans were handing out something to passing aliens. Small wrapped packages that turned out to contain a substance they called chocolate. And everywhere Vorath looked, he saw people smiling. The invasion had begun. And it came not with weapons, but with gifts. And somehow, that was more terrifying than any fleet. 50 cycles had passed since the humans first reached the stars. And the universe was no longer the same. The grand chamber of the Galactic Concord still floated in the darkness above Thesser Prime. But its name had changed, and its purpose had transformed beyond recognition. For it was now called the Hall of the Thousand Peoples. And where 12 species had once ruled over all others, now 1,000 voices spoke as equals. The old order was gone, and had not fallen to invasion or conquest, had not crumbled under the weight of war, but had simply faded away like morning mist before the rising sun, made obsolete by ideas that spread faster than any fleet could travel democracy. The humans called it the radical notion that every being had a voice and a vote. And species that had been ruled by hereditary councils for 10,000 cycles suddenly found their youth demanding change, demanding representation, demanding the right to choose their own paths open. Markets replaced the carefully controlled trade networks that had enriched the powerful few. And knowledge that had been hoarded by the Science Directorate was now shared freely on networks that spanned the galaxy. And innovation that had once taken centuries now happened in years. Some species had resisted. The Moravaks had clung to their traditions, their elegant hierarchies, their certainty that they knew best how the universe should be ordered. But their children had looked at the humans and seen something different, something vibrant and chaotic and alive. And one by one, they had left their ancestral halls to seek their fortunes among the stars. The HFY had chosen violence, launching a preemptive strike against human colonies with all the might of their war fleets, confident that their superior technology would crush these upstart primates. They had been wrong. The humans had not fought back with matching fleets and superior weapons, for they had neither. But instead they had fought with the same terrible creativity they brought to everything else, adapting and innovating and finding weaknesses that the HFY had never known existed. And within a single cycle, the war was over. Not with the destruction of the HFY, but with their humiliation, their mighty fleet scattered, their confidence shattered, And then the humans had offered peace, not the peace of conquest. Not the peace of subjugation, but genuine peace. Trade agreements and cultural exchanges, and the opportunity to join the growing community of species that were building something new together. Most of the HFY had accepted. Their pride wounded, but their wisdom awakened. And now HFY traders could be found on every station. Their children learning human languages and human customs and the human way of asking questions that had never been asked before of Earth. Cal sat in a garden on Earth and watched the sunset paint the sky in colors. He had no names for that had taken him years to come to this place, to set foot on the world that still haunted his nightmares. But he had come at last, for he needed to understand. Needed to see with his own eyes what these strange creatures had built. The garden was attached to a home in a place called California, and the air smelled of flowers and salt and something the humans called barbecue, and children played on the grass nearby. Human children with soft skin and bright eyes running alongside Volturi, hatchlings whose scales shone like jewels in the fading light. An old woman sat beside him on the bench, her hair white as starlight, her eyes sharp and knowing despite her years. Admiral Elena Martinez. Retired, she was the same Martinez who had stood on the bridge of the illuminated path 50 cycles ago. The same Martinez who had learned to speak Moravax in 3 weeks and had convinced a crew to join her cause with nothing but words and smiles. "You came," she said, and her voice was warm. "I had to see," Vorath replied. "I had to understand. And do you understand now?" Vorath watched a human child offer a Volturi hatchling a piece of something brown and sweet. Watched the hatchling taste it and make a sound of pure delight. Watched the two of them run off together to find more adventures. "You really thought we were monsters," Elena said, not unkindly. "You were," Vorath said. "And he meant it. You still are, in your way. For every species is monstrous from certain angles. And we simply had never encountered a monster like you before." He paused, searching for the right words. "Monsters who share," he said finally. "Monsters who want to make everyone around them better. Who cannot rest until they have asked every question and found every answer. Who look at the impossible and see only a challenge to be overcome." Elena laughed. "And the sound was like music. That is humanity for you," she said. "Too stubborn to be conquered, too curious to stay home, too stupid to know when we have won." "Have you won?" Vorath asked. Elena looked out at the garden, at the children playing, at the sky where stars were beginning to appear. Stars that humanity had reached and touched and changed forever. "I do not think we see it as winning," she said. "We just see it as growing, learning, becoming something more than we were yesterday. And we want everyone to grow with us." Vorath closed his 4 eyes and let the alien sun warm his scales. He thought about the council chamber where he had screamed warnings that no one believed. About the frozen moon where his battalion had died. About the long years in the cell where he had been called insane for speaking the truth. He thought about the galaxy as it had been, ordered and controlled and stagnant, and the galaxy as it was now. Chaotic and changing and impossibly alive. "I was right to warn them," he said quietly. "The Concord as we knew it did end." "Yes," Elena agreed. But something better took its place. A Volturi hatchling ran up to them, scales gleaming, holding out a piece of chocolate. "Grandfather Vorath," the child said. For the hatchlings had adopted him as an honorary elder. "Try this. It is amazing." Vorath took the chocolate and tasted it. And despite everything, despite the memories and the pain and the long road that had brought him here, he smiled. "It is good," he admitted. Elena patted his scaled hand. "Welcome to the family," she said, and Vorath Kell. The madman who had been right, who had seen the future and been ignored, who had watched his world end and a new one be born, sat in a garden on Earth and watched the stars come out. The galaxy would never be the same, and perhaps, he thought as a human child, climbed into his lap to point out constellations. That was not such a terrible thing after all. The humans had come with fire and questions and an endless hunger to know and grow and share, and against all odds, against all his fears, they had made the universe a little bit brighter. He closed his eyes and listened to the children laughing. And for the first time in 50 cycles, he felt at peace.